Hello, everyone. This is Shel Fuller, aka The New Ways, and welcome to another edition of the Elixir podcast. Today we have two special guests. This is the first time I've actually had two guests on the show, and I'm thrilled to have them. They're both wonderful classical singers, and this is something I've always wanted to have on the show since last season because I think of course, everyone knows opera, but I think there's a lot of information that people just don't have or don't understand. And these two people are probably the best two people we can talk to. Tons of experience, wonderful people. So please welcome to the Elixir podcast, Ms. Pamela Lloyd and Andrew Costello. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, great. Thank you guys for actually taking the time to speak with me today. As we all know, there's a time difference. So if I sound a little weird today, I'm just letting you know. I'm in Berlin, so they're in New York, and I was sick when we were supposed to record it earlier. So it's 2 a.m. here and 8 in the morning and 8 in the evening over there. So good. So I guess I just want to start off first. I want to start off, I guess, the first question to Pam. Of course, there are many ways to express yourself musically. What brought you to opera, especially because you started off with a background in musical theater?
Yeah, it's funny. I started off in school thinking about straight theater. And then when I discovered I could sing, I just loved the characters in musical theater, in the traditional musical theater. And then I needed to, when I was hired to do Cats, and, of course I trained, but when I was hired to do Cats in Vienna, there were like 3 high Cs, 3 or 4 of them in the first number, and there's one soprano who has to sing it, which was me. So I found a teacher there, Frank, who was a fantastic teacher, wonderful singer, incredible musician and pianist, and just a specialist in modern opera. He could sight read an opera. He was a fantastic musician and a wonderful person. And so I started studying more seriously, classically, just to get the high notes.
Okay.
And then, of course, as I got exposed to the music, I fell in love with it for so many reasons. And one thing I love is that when you sing in a language that is not your native language, it becomes like poetry to you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes it,
yeah.
Not just an opera, but an art song. You're singing a poem in French, for instance, that was set to music. And so the words become so important.
Well, I think you find another connection as a non-native speaker to it also. Some things that that, as a non-native speaker, you perceive things different. You have a different sort of perspective to what the piece is about.
Yeah, it's not everyday language.
Okay.
It might be to the person who speaks it, but to me, it's like it's singing language as opposed to walking down the street and grocery shopping language.
Okay. Yeah, you shouldn't burst into opera in the grocery store. That's probably not so recommended. What about you?
I'm thinking of doing it, it's too crowded in our grocery store and I want more room.
I can imagine. Andrew, what about you? What brought you to opera? How did that start off for you?
Well, my parents are both classically trained musicians. My dad's a clarinetist, and my mom's a church organist and pianist. And okay. I was involved in music at a very early age. I was in the children's choir. I was recruited by my mom, and so music was just a part of my life from the very beginning.
Okay.
Then in high school and in college, I became more interested in vocal music. And eventually I started taking some lessons in Italy. And there was a kind of a funny story. But anyway, I won't get into it.
You can tell it if it's interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, well, I was studying with this Italian professor privately at his house. And he was teaching me, and all of a sudden his wife walks in the door, the house, and he says, "Excuse me, just 1 minute." And he goes out. He walks out of the studio, closes the door, starts talking to his wife. They have this huge argument, screaming and yelling. And so anyway, so he comes back and he goes, women.
Oh, God. But I have a question actually for
and then
both.
we resumed the lesson. I didn't know what to say.
I have a question actually for both of you, because I have to say, I remember years ago when I met Pam, and Pam told me, I said, oh, so what do you do? She says, I'm an opera singer. And of course, with my sort of cynical thinking, I just thought, uh-oh, I wonder what that means. Like, is she an opera singer, or is she like one of those people who thinks they're an opera singer, but they're really a performance artist? And then she sang the first time, and I was like, oh, she's a real opera singer. But how does one know that they are able and built vocally to be able to handle something like opera? Because opera is not singing a pop song, is not singing musical theater. How do you know? Like, is there a sign, or is it just someone tells you, or how do you realize I am good enough to go in this direction?
Basically, I was told by a couple people, including this Italian vocal coach. After I was about to leave and go back to the United States, and he said, "You better study, because you've got a damn good voice."
Mm-hmm.
So then I went back, and in my senior year in college, I auditioned for the choir master for a solo in Beethoven's, what was it called? Messa Solemnis.
Okay.
And it resurrects, it resurrects. And it was really funny, because the girl who sang before me, she was very shy, and she was in the choir, and she wanted to audition as soloist, but she was totally nervous. And she gets up there and she she was terrified, the poor girl, right?
Oh my God.
And then I get up there and I go, it resurrects it. And the guy, he was used to, these people coming to sing for him who were in the choir, who were totally nervous,
Mm-hmm.
Sang, and I just sang out, using the technique that I learned from my Italian professor. And he almost fell out of his chair.
I can imagine.
Yeah, he was. I can't really show it on this podcast. He was gripping the side of the couch, because he was so startled,
I can imagine, because I remember the first time I ever heard Pam sing, and she opened her mouth, and the first thought I had was, first I was just amazed, and I was impressed. The second thought, I just thought, how the hell is this voice coming out of this tiny little body? It's unimaginable. So how did you know Pam? Like, what made you, you said you trained, and so you wanted to hit the high notes, and you fell in love with the music, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to sing it. So how did you realize for yourself?
Well, for a long time, I thought I was a lyric soprano, a light lyric soprano, and it turns out that high notes come very easily to me. So some people said I was a coloratura, and I don't sing like Queen of the Night. I don't, whatever that is, an F above high C.
Yeah.
But that's not my voice. And it really is a matter of finding like the right size shoes.
Okay.
If the shoe's too small, you feel constricted. If the shoe's too big, you step out of it, which is, I don't know if that's a great analogy or not, but.
Well, if you've ever worn, if anyone has ever worn small shoes, I think it's a great analogy.
If something fits, and there's so many different kinds of opera, and there's all sorts of classical song and oratorio and all these things that you try it out, if it fits for you. And I had a couple of teachers at UCLA when I was studying musical theater who suggested I do the opera workshop and this and that, and I didn't want to, and I didn't. Wasn't interested at the time, and I kind of regret it, of course, now. But if you start singing something and it feels a little easy, then it's probably right for you.
Okay.
It's the right way.
So how would you describe your voices? Like you said, you there's coloratura, there's different. So well, how would you describe your voice, and what in which category would you place your voice?
Yeah. Well, it's
Both of
interesting.
you.
You're in Berlin, and
Mm-hmm.
they call it a Fach system.
Mm-hmm.
The categories of voice, and a friend of mine he's very educated. He goes to the theater all the time, and he said, "Well, the baritone's the high voice, right?" And I'm like, "No, four
No.
kinds of voice, like what is soprano, mezzo soprano, contralto, tenor, baritone, bass."
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Exactly.
there's many, as you know, many different categories based on,
based on the music and the style of the music.
and
Okay.
of your voice, the color of your voice.
So what are you? What would your voice be?
I would say, I've been told I'm a dramatic. I don't think I'm quite that. I think I am what's called a spinto soprano, which is a lyric soprano and a dramatic soprano. And there's an overlap there. There are certain roles that a dramatic soprano will sing that a spinto will sing.
Okay. And Andrew, is it the same for you? How would you categorize your voice?
More of a dramatic baritone. In other words, the bigger repertoire with big orchestras like Wagner, and also I get to do a lot of villain roles, which is a lot of fun. I'm smiling the whole time.
Yeah, because the villains are always the more
villains should always look, serious and mean and nasty. But I'm usually smiling the whole time.
Well, I think
a great time.
The music for usually the villains in opera, usually they have the more interesting songs. I think for me personally, musically, they have a lot more. There's more sinister because I think when the writer, whoever writes the opera, of course, they try to incorporate the psychology of the person in the music, because the person's a villain, so the person's either scheming or the person's this, and I think they try to incorporate that into the music, and I find it a lot more interesting. And villains can smile; that makes them actually a little bit more scary.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh, here's another one.
And
we have cats. Okay.
Every opera singer has to have cats.
Okay.
Yeah, he is a baritone.
Okay, he's a baritone.
Yeah.
So you're a dramatic baritone.
Right.
Okay.
And they call it in German
dramatic.
Helden.
Or well, that connotes basically the Wagnerian type role, Wotan.
Okay.
He's not a villain. He's actually more like a politician who's trying to.
Are politicians not villains?
Oh, that's true. I didn't think of that.
That's another podcast.
That's another podcast. Yeah.
I want to ask you about the Wagner pieces. Exactly. I want to ask about the Wagner pieces because, of course, Wagner is known not only for the power of the music, but also the length of his pieces. So, I mean, if you go into a Wagner show, pack a lunch with you. How do you train as a performer for that length of time? Because opera really takes so much and puts such a high demand on your voice, and yet you're playing a lead role or something in a Wagner piece that can go on for 3 or 4 hours. How do you actually portray
Birgit Nielsen was the one she was asked that question. She's like the most famous dramatic soprano of Wagnerian music.
Yeah.
And her answer was a good pair of shoes. And you have to, your stamina.
But you also have to pace yourself. You can't give 100% all the time. And also, Wagner wrote the music in such a way that you don't have to. In fact, big long monologue that Wotan has, and he's basically mumbling to his daughter and saying, "Yeah, well, I did these things. They weren't really, they weren't really kosher, but I tried my best, but
I was young and needed the money.
So, I know it was unethical, but I'm sorry." And it goes on like that for like 10 minutes.
Okay.
And trying to explain himself, like Cuomo,
Oh my God! Now we're gonna have a Senate hearing.
Well, yeah, if I had known that was wrong, I would never done it. But nobody told me.
Yeah. Oh, and I have another quote from Leontine Price, who was not a Bulgarian. Could have been if she wanted to, but she sang mostly the Italian rap. I think the best American singer of ever.
Well, she was amazing, of course.
Yeah, and she said, sing on your interest, not your principle.
Okay.
I mean, that can be misleading because you don't want to hold back your voice because that's harder. Like whispering is hard. It can, it can tire your voice out.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to sing unimpeded and feed the breath all the time, but you don't want to whack it.
Okay. So that's how you pace yourself in order to make sure that you can get through whatever it is you're
if you
performing.
trying to use as little tension as possible, use only the tension that's good tension, like the diaphragm, or
exactly.
not tensing your throat or your tongue.
And when you're singing correctly, in a role, most of the fatigue at the end of the performance will be up here in your head.
Yeah.
Because you're
from the character work, you mean?
You're doing the character work, not in your throat, which is just two little pieces of flesh vibrating.
Okay. Well, Pam, you did Cats, so I mean, musical theater, of course, you need to have a strong voice also, but it's a big difference. I mean, it's a huge leap from musical theater. I mean, unless you're Audra McDonald, you're not really singing on that, to that extent. How did you find this power? Because like I said, I was so impressed when the first time you sang. I just thought, oh my God, it was in your living room too, and I was like, I need an auditorium here. This is just this room. It's wonderful, but this is like, she needs more. I need more sound here. How do you get to that point to be able to have that much power behind your voice? I know it has to do with breathing, but how long does it take for you to train to get to that point to say, okay, this is the strength that I want or I need professionally as an opera singer?
It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like release.
Okay.
It's you can sing with a lot of tension and nothing comes out at all.
Yeah.
Or free. It really doesn't feel like you're using a lot.
Okay.
You really don't feel like, and you don't use as much breath as you think.
So you actually, when you're singing strongly, say for example, you don't, for you, it's the breathing and the actual power behind the voice is sort of, I don't want to say effortless, but that's not the part that's really the most, I guess, the most complicated, I guess, at the moment.
Yeah, and also there's resonance. The more resonance you have, voicing the overtones, the undertones, that makes it carry.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard singers, I was thinking about a tenor I know, in a small room, and it sounds like a really big voice.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him on stage, and it wasn't as big because just the nature of his resonance was not
the lack of clarity.
The lack of clarity, yeah.
Okay.
You have that clear sound, and you want to have they call it chiaroscuro sometimes, like the brightness and the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I have both at the same time. And like they said, Pavarotti's voice was not huge, but he had a great deal of what's called squillo, and it would cut through 60 instruments.
Because it was so clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not really singing that loud, you're just carrying.
But when for example, if you have someone, you're doing an opera and you're with other performers, and you have performers who may not have that sort of ability to, their voices, for like maybe in a smaller room, it's okay, but in a larger theater, it's just not working. How does that, because then it's rather noticeable, isn't it, between the performances?
It is. Actually, I had it. That's interesting you say that. I was singing in a Beethoven's Ninth.
Mm-hmm.
My voice was
Beethoven's Eighth.
Yeah, I was singing Beethoven's Eighth.
I thought you were singing all the instruments. Right. I was like, he's singing all the instruments. He's that good, people. He's that good. He's doing the ninth all by himself. He's that good.
I did the tuba, the trombone, the violin. Yeah.
I believe you can do it, Andrew. Believe me.
So anyway, the other three singers in the quartet had much smaller voices, and the conductor begged me to sing softer. It's very complimentary to me. He said, you've got a Ferrari and the other guys, they have Volkswagen.
Oh my God.
And he said, can you just slow down?
Yeah, but isn't it more stressful for you because you have
it is. No, you're absolutely right.
You can't.
So I said, well, I'll try. I was being diplomatic. I said, I'll try, but I didn't. I just sang the way I knew how to sing and what was comfortable for me.
Exactly.
You can't inhibit yourself. You've got to sing out.
What's the I forget her name, the opera singer who her voice is so loud that she just sang upstage when she needed to bring it down a bit.
To avoid that joke.
Exactly. Yeah.
She had to sing a piano for something and she just turned her head into the wing. Yeah, it's phenomenal. And yeah.
How do you protect your voice? Like, because your voice is your yes, that's your tool. How do you
high? It's going to carry anyway.
But how do you protect your voice in general? So how do you keep your voice fit over the years? Because, for example, I did the interview with Martha Wash, and Martha Wash is she's known for big gospel vocals, so from the southern things, and she's also said that over time she still has that power, but her voice is also darkened a little bit, and there's certain things that she now cannot do or she won't do because she knows it could damage her voice. Because her voice has just changed when you get older and things like that. So how do you protect your voice in general? And have your voices changed over time since you began? You've both been doing this for 25 years, a long time. Yeah.
I think everybody is different, particularly women.
Yeah, I know you just run from people on the subway.
Yeah, so I think I don't have children. I understand that sometimes when you have a child, that makes your voice darker permanently. My voice has gotten, I don't know if it's gotten bigger. I think I've gotten better at handling it. So I can
voice has gotten bigger.
It's gotten bigger?
It can't get any bigger. My God, Pam, come on, pull it together, woman.
It's
monumental.
Mondocious.
Oh my God. Okay.
I think just basically also handling it a little better, with a little more ease.
It helps to have a really good voice teacher who can listen to you and be objective. We have the great privilege and fortune to have Abe Polikoff as our teacher.
Okay.
He had a wonderful career throughout Europe.
If we're going off track, and we're doing some things that may, not hurt our voice, but diminish our voice.
Okay.
He will say, hello, wait a minute, over here, you're going this way, you should be going that way.
Okay.
And
you have to have another set of ears.
Yeah, you have to have another set of ears because they can only go by what they feel, and it's often very subjective,
okay,
misleading. Yeah. So if you have another pair of ears that can help you, then
that you trust,
and is leading you on the right path, you're way ahead of a lot of singers. A lot of singers, unfortunately, don't have someone like that.
Okay. What happens in one of those sessions with him? For what are you practicing? What are you building on? What are you trying to reach? I mean, you may not necessarily be preparing for a role. So what happens in this vocal coaching sessions that helps you I guess move further and to become better?
Well, one thing definitely is to keep you not going off on a tangent. You get an idea in your head. As Andrew said, it's very subjective. And then you could find yourself thinking you're doing something and you're not.
Of course, yeah.
Also just working on different elements of technique. And, the hard part about that is you have to do all of it at once. You can't work on your registration without working on your breathing, because you can't sing without breathing. And you know what I mean? It all together, and you work on one thing and the other thing will improve too.
Okay.
It depends on where you are that day. building on something that
yeah.
you did a few days earlier.
Okay.
The idea is that with a really good teacher, you're always learning, you're always improving, you're always getting to the point where you can make the resonance just a little bit clearer.
Okay.
The voice a little bit more flexible.
You're never done.
You're never done, really.
What's important for people? So if I'm producing an opera, I'm directing an opera, what elements in your voice are they looking for? I know they're looking for clarity, they're looking for certain things, or is there certain things where you say these three elements must be as good as possible in terms of my voice, because that's what casting people, that's what they're looking for when they're casting or stuff like that?
It really depends on the the conductor or the director.
So,
they could have some idea that has nothing to do with music.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes, if you look the part, they'll give you the role and you could maybe not have the voice for it at all.
Okay.
Happened many times.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens in opera too. But if you have a casting director who has a cultivated ear, who knows what they're looking for in terms of voice, and then they'll look for a particular timbre of the voice, maybe a certain amount of power. They may want a voice that's not beautiful or not particularly powerful. It's the role of Loga in Rheingold, and he's basically a lawyer, and he's trying to explain to Wotan, if you do this, this will happen, and if you do that, that will happen. But he's like a character.
He's a sleazy lawyer.
He's like a character actor,
Okay. So he doesn't have to have the best voice. He needs to be more the character. So
he needs to be a very good physical actor.
Okay.
That's the most important thing for that role.
Yeah, they're different. There's comic roles for genres, comic tenors, and then you have your heroic tenor, and it all depends on how the role is written. If it's a big orchestra, Wagner has a lot of horns and stuff, then
yes, he does.
You got it. You have to they need somebody who can be heard.
Yeah. I like the Tales of Hoffmann, the one who plays he plays the butler, and he has a little ditty to sing. And it's la 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 la. They want a voice like that. La,
exactly.
Because he's supposed to be very funny.
Of course.
You don't want a beautiful singing.
Yeah.
Although like in Turandot, they have the king, the son of the sky. He's the king. He's Turandot's father, and everybody's bowing to him and this and that, and he comes parading out and he sits way backstage, and then he sings like this. It's very funny. That is very funny.
Yeah.
Since we're talking a little bit about characters, I'm trying to remember. There's another question I want to make sure I definitely ask. When you're preparing for a role, so you've been cast, where does the building a character and perfecting the musical material meet for you guys? How does that process begin? Because in theater, you just have the text, and you're always building on character, and of course, things we don't have. There's no score to follow and stuff like that. In this case, you're building a character within a structure, which is the music. How do you go about that process of going to build the best character you can build within that structure?
I think it depends. I mean, if you're lucky enough to work with a great piece of music, it's usually in the music. Andrew's done Scarpia in Tosca all the time, who's like the orchestration, the overture starts with the theme of Scarpia, and he's villainous, but he's playful, and it's in the music. It's all in the music.
But when I'm learning a new role, the way I don't know if every singer works like this, but what I like to do is I'll memorize it, dead cold, like I can recite it in my sleep.
Yeah.
So that I know it so well, then I feel comfortable in exploring the character and understanding it, because then I don't have to look at a book.
That's exactly how I worked when I did theater. People, they said, don't, you're not supposed to learn it that way. But for me, once I learned it and it was set, I could play with the words. I could play with the things. I didn't have to worry about the text because it was there. So I understand totally what you mean.
That's the way I work. And now when I was working in Germany, a lot of the singers, they would show up. I mean, granted, it was a new role for them, but them sometimes they would show up with the book still in their hand and they're doing stage rehearsals. You know, I don't know how they got away with that, but I was dead set against that. I was like working 8 hours a day just trying to get the damn music in my head, you know, and then after that, then I would say, okay, now what can I do with this role? What is
exactly?
And sometimes if it was a really good stage director, they would help you with the physicality of the role, blocking itself would help me almost as much as the music.
Yeah,
of course. Well, of course, I mean, the how you move around the space and so what are you doing? So what sort of business is going on while you're doing it, of course, helps add things to the character. Is it the same for you, Pam, when you're dealing with character work and preparing a role?
Yeah, well, there's so much to work on. If you're trying to think of a character, when you don't know the music, then you don't have all the information you need.
Okay.
Decision on that. And sometimes you'll see something, you'll get a note to do something and you look at the music and you're like, well, why is it written? Why is this part so low? So maybe it's, you know, that gives you a hint. I'm trying to think of an example offhand where that tells you there's like a menacing line in Cavalleria Rusticana, which is who's in Sicily, and she's disgraced because she's not married and she's got a boyfriend, and the rumor is she's pregnant. And he's of course got a another girlfriend, and she's married. There's no shame for her to be married and have a boyfriend, but for, you know, so it's a social commentary. But when she gets desperate, she digs into her chest voice.
Well, it's also like Medea with the I think the scene when she starts, that's the part when she's singing about her plan, and she's on stage sort of by herself. She just had this confrontation and she's singing by herself, and it starts off just the first few lines are just because they're so menacing, because you see this plan coming, and of course it's a strong part, but it builds. Like there's a part where it builds. Like I have to listen to the opera again, but I remember I've seen it twice, and I remember thinking that's exactly it, because I'm really familiar with the play itself. And I was like, that's it. And I think has there ever been a moment when you've been in a production or you started a production and you realize either I'm not getting it or this is just not turning out the way I expected? Always.
Oh
my God. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I think, hello?
Oops.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry. I had a problem with my technical thing. I just had to plug something in.
No problem. No
sorry.
problem.
I was like, oh my God. Okay, yeah. Okay. So tell me about sort of let's do it this way, a positive and a negative experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the more interesting experiences was when the first time I did Tales of Hoffman, and I didn't, know the role that well, and the director, I basically just stood there and sang. And it didn't really have much to do. And he's a villain, and he's always manipulating things and screwing up everybody's life,
Okay.
And the intendant came over. He was watching, and he said, "What are you doing?" I was like, doing what the director told me to do. He's like, "Oh, it's all wrong. It's all wrong." So he intervened.
Okay.
He intervened and he restaged everything. He was so angry with the director. He intervened
Well, that's, I mean, that's the savior, you know, it's like, especially if you have someone who's just not able to really to give you any insight, you know. I mean, that's the one of the big that is the major part of directing is to um to
Yeah,
guide people to
yeah,
you know,
yeah. And the thing is about Tales of Hoffman, it's so full
yeah.
of, it's a fantasy.
Mm,
There's so many wonderful stage effects you can do, and
mm-hmm,
the affected poses you can have, and it won't destroy the thrust of the piece.
mm-hmm,
In Tales of Hoffman, you have a lot of
Leeway.
You
mm-hmm.
know, for example, like La Traviata, that's a very there's certain
There's a
things,
reason about it.
there's a realism about it.
Okay.
So very subtle mores that are observed in the opera
Mm-hmm.
were particular to that time when it was written. So if you don't follow that, not that you can't be creative with it.
Of course, but there's a certain expectation of
There are certain givens in
yeah.
If you don't
follow that, then you lose the impact of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Or the whole point of it, because it's telling us.
Actually, one of the reasons why I got involved in opera was La Traviata when I saw Perez Estradas in a movie with Domingo. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I have seen it. It's a long time ago, but I have seen it.
Yeah. And it just blew me away. It was just unbelievable. Fantastic.
I remember years ago, that's one of the things I loved about PBS. I remember, and that's one of the joys of public broadcasting is I remember sitting at home. It was like I was just 8 or 9 years old, and it was like a night, and it came. So La Traviata came on, and I remember watching this, and I thought it was a sort of a little bit so modernized in terms of the look and stuff like that, but it made it accessible. So it was the first time, because usually what people think in terms of opera, they hear the music and they think, oh, it's not accessible to me, and if they're not a lover of the music. But once you see it actually in movement, when you see it on the stage, or you see it really well done, you're like, it really just opens up, at least for me, that opened up my eyes. I was fascinated. I remember my mom came in the room and she's like, "You're the weirdest black child in the world. I'm coming to the room watching this." I used to watch Lawrence Welk. I used to do all this stuff because I found it interesting. And from that moment on, I used to watch Lawrence Welk. Yeah, I used to watch Lawrence Welk and then Benny Hill. Quality television here. But that for me was watching it moving it to the stage. I mean, I think in my theater experience, I've only had one experience with a director where even when the play started, I have to tell you to this day, I can't really tell you what was going on. I didn't feel like he would explain something and I wasn't sure. I'm like, either I'm dumb or he just thinks he's really intelligent. But it's not coming across. And as I talked to other cast members about it, they also said, we're just doing the best we can because we really don't know what he wants either. And I think that's frustrating. So I can imagine standing there on stage and having some, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm doing what he told me to do," which is actually absolutely nothing, which I don't want to do. I'd like to be doing something.
Well, there's always the trick. If you need to, you can forget what you were blocking. I've blocking before.
You know who was a very good stage director? Wonderful, I think. Was the Amato. Have you ever heard of the Amato opera? Yeah. And he would actually get on stage and demonstrate for you what you wanted. He would out all the parts, male and female. He would act them all out.
Yeah.
And it was, that demonstration, that's all you needed to know. You just did what he said.
And what about you, Pam? Have you had a negative, or what's your most positive experience in opera? I would say, since we had
Andrew's. That's a really hard one. I don't know. I really don't know what's the most positive. I mean,
singing with me.
Oh, yeah, singing. Well, actually, when we...
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe she thinks otherwise. I don't know.
I don't know. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you privately, Pam. You can give me the. You can give me the. You can give me the background gossip.
No, I just think singing, like you were talking about Wagner, and when people talk about the Flying Dutchman, people who love Wagner say it's not really Wagner because it's kind of Italian. I think it's like such a fantastic story and score, and it's simple. And what I love about, we were talking about this actually kind of, when people complain that opera isn't feminist, but so many of the heroes are the women.
Exactly.
Watch TV and movies. You don't see that very often.
Yep.
You know, even if she's the girlfriend, she's going to poison herself. She's going to jump into the ocean. She's going to save the day. You know, and I don't take it like if La Traviata, when Violetta dies, it's not a punishment because she's a courtesan.
Yeah. That's
how some people see it. No, she's a hero. She's a hero who, and it's about her. Not about, you know, so often the story is about the woman, or she is the driving force.
The person making the plans, you know, finding the solution. Okay, how's this going to work? That's very true.
Yeah, they get to be, and even if they're a little villainous, you know, and they're not villainous. It's just it's very theatrical. It's very passionate.
Yeah.
So things they're not supposed to do.
Are there particular, this is a question for both of you, are there particular composers that you either don't want to sing because it's just not your style, or you say, I don't sing this style of opera? Like, for example, if something is too modern, like a Poulenc, you know, not everyone can do a Poulenc, you know? So are there certain things where you say, I'm not going to do that because it's either it goes against my training, or it's just not...
But sometimes doesn't fit you like a shoe. I actually do love it. I don't think it's right for me, but I love the music. I wouldn't sing early music.
Yeah.
My voice, and I don't feel it. How about you?
I'll sing anything.
Oh God. Oh, no, Andrew, you're so easy.
It really depends on the taste of the person who's casting, really.
Okay.
I mean, usually a voice like mine is not going to be doing early opera because
it's just
music, because that's the style that they sing, which I don't like anyway. Is not my style. So, you know, I mean, if they're singing, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't like that either. I just think I want to take a nap. It's like, okay, no, that's not. It's just not exciting. I just want to. Yes, it's not exciting. It's too
Although I did sing in actually Popea, I did sing, but I was the god Mercury, and sang it full voice, and you know there was a lot of coloratura, a lot of runs, you know, it was fine, and people liked it, you know. But it was funny because a colleague came up to me and said, "You should sing Verdi, not Monte Verdi."
Oh my God.
Oh, but you know, people generally liked it. The other singers liked it.
Okay.
And, but the conductor, she didn't sing. I think she didn't have a hand in my singing in that opera. Seemed to appreciate my voice in that, and because there was I was rehearsing it and just singing it fine and everything, and one of the other singers comes up to me and says, "Oh, you have such a big voice, and you're still, you know, agile. You can do all those runs and everything." And the conductor kind of glared at her.
Oh God.
Yeah, so I was like, well, okay, so
thank you for the compliment. Let me run away.
Thank you for the compliment, but you know.
Yeah, no, it's okay. You both will be surprised. It's like I told you from the beginning. We actually are pretty much already at the end of our time together.
Oh my goodness, that was
fast. 45 minutes with you is not enough.
I know we're gonna bring you back on the show, both of you, to talk some more because even now, um, I have some. I have some. There's a telephone ringing in the background. That's
Oh,
not the
yeah,
music.
sorry.
It's
Oh,
not this.
sorry
It's okay.
about that.
No, it's okay. No, I'm telling them. I'm telling the listeners so they're not thinking, "What's this music and happening?" So that's not what they sing.
You wind up the piece with the yeah.
No, I mean even I mean I have to say this I could keep talking forever, but I think then some people would be like, okay, well let's divide this into two parts. So I think at some point, maybe the next couple of months, we should sit down and do a part two because I still have tons of questions. It's like I felt like I
Oh,
just began starting
oh,
to
wow.
be
Yeah,
stop. So
we'd love to do that.
yeah, I mean, I had a guy here. The last guest we had, Sagadia. He's a experimental composer, and with him, I have to bring him back too because I sat there with him, and when we were finished, we both were like, "Oh my God, there's so much more." We were getting just into the details of it, and like I said, I think one of the things for the podcast, which I think is really important, is to not introduce people to one type of music or to one type of occupation or something, but that people get a well-rounded view of all different types, classical and so the modern electronic stuff and all of that stuff. I think people need to have a well-rounded view and hear from the people who actually are involved in it, who actually make it their lives and who have the passion behind it. And I'm that's why I'm really thankful that you both took the time to be be my guest today because it's really important for me to get that out. And like I said, um the answers you gave, I have to bring you back because we have more questions. And we can talk more gossip and stuff like that. So but you can tell me about some more horrible things now. No, but again, thank you both, Pamela Lloyd and Andrew Costello. Andrew Costello. I'm sorry, I'm destroying your name. For being on the show today. Do you have any last thoughts or anything you'd like to share?
What's that?
Do you have any last thoughts or anything you'd like to share before we wrap it up for today?
Well, you're a fantastic interviewer. You bring out
Yeah,
all sorts of ideas.
I loved your questions.
Yes.
I loved your questions. And, you know, when I love the fact that you didn't ask me what is my favorite role, because I hate that question.
What's your favorite role, Andrew? Watch you part two. When we get back together, that's going to be the first question. We're going to get back together. We're going to do a second round at some point in the near future. And the first question is going to be, Andrew, let's start off a question for you. And that's exactly how we're going to start it off. I'm going to write it down. All right, then.
No, I really enjoyed the questions. They were original and well thought out.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So
just think about opera in a different way than we do on a daily basis, actually.
Yeah, which I think is good. I think it's to makes it interesting for everyone. So thank you again. And thank you to our listeners who have been listening to the Elixir podcast. Of course, like I just said, we're going to bring them back at some point, probably in the near future. So make sure you check out that. Elixir podcast is aired every second Thursday. So if you're listening to it this week, that means you won't get a new episode for another 2 weeks. But of course, I know it's very sad, right? But in the meantime, if you like dance music, you can also tune into Mix for Your Life, which is focused on just dance music. But once again, thank you for listening. And as usual, have a great day.
Oh